Off to a great audio start. There it is. All right, let's try this all over again. What's going on, everyone? Welcome into the Cleveland Browns Report by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson here, getting you guys ready for our preseason finale against the Chiefs. Now, we've got a lot to talk about on today's show because the rumors are all over the board right now following the restructuring contracts of Myles Garrett and Joel Bitonio, which freed up a lot of cap space, and a lot of people are wondering, does all this extra cap space mean a big move is coming? I'm going to give you my 2 cents on it. I will kind of go across the board, see what everyone is saying. Now, I'm still feeling a bit under the weather. I kind of got this summer cold. It sucks, and I just can't seem to kick it just yet. So I'm sorry if I sound a little bit nasally or if I've got to step aside to blow my nose. But we are not going anywhere because we've got some real juice to talk about here in the middle of August. But before we get to all that, we've got a lot of people tuning in right now, and I want to make sure everyone clicks on the notification and gets their seat before we jump into the nuts and bolts of all this. So shout out your city for me. Get in the comment section. Let me know where you are watching from. Michael is catching us for the first time live. Michael, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm very sorry that the first time you are tuning into a live show, I sound awful, but hopefully next Tuesday I sound a lot better. Josh is watching from Southeast Michigan, as always. Elaine is in Oxford, Ohio. Epic Jets in Canton. We've got Darnell Johnson in Cleveland. Ryan's over in Dayton. Michael's in Phoenix, Arizona. Kimberly, thank you so much. You know what? I'm 25 years old, so I'm somewhat mature, but I'm also not the best adult. But I actually brought all of my jerseys home last week, and I washed them. And that was very grown up of me because I tend to let them sit here sometimes for months on end. So shout out to me, but I got a nice smelling jersey on today, so producer Trace does not have to plug his nose. Christopher is tuning in all the way from Italy. We have a winner for the furthest viewer on today's show. Love to see it. Landon's in Cambridge, Ohio, Steven is in Parma. We've got Westlake, New Philadelphia. Love to see all of us in the Buckeye State. Jamaican, I think just Jamaica would be the correct answer, but you could be Jamaican too. Huntsville, Alabama. Florida's in the house. Parkersburg, West Virginia. Sorry, I'm just not quite all the way there with this cold right now. But with over 137 people watching right now, let me toss this question your way. Is a big move coming for the Browns? We've gone full Peter Windhorst meme here of like, what's going on in Cleveland, right? Why are the Browns restructuring Joel Bitonio's contract and Myles Garrett's contract, freeing up all this cap space for what? To have money in a bank account for a rainy day? Maybe, but you usually only need about $5+ million in the regular season to make up for a rainy day, right? If you were to have a starter go down and you don't like your backup, and there's a free agent out there who, hey, we didn't think he could play 17 games, but we can ask him to play 8 games, and he can give us 8 good games. Sure, you want some money in the bank for stuff like that. But they've got $35 million in the bank right now. There is no free agent out there right now who could command even close to half of that, right? It'd be one thing if DeAndre Hopkins was still a free agent, or if the Browns never traded for Zadarius Smith and they wanted to sign Yannick Ngakoue. But both of those big-ticketed items are off the block here. So what is this money for? I've got some theories. I've got some ideas. I don't think it is for a blockbuster trade. I don't think it is for a huge free agent signing. Ultimately, I think what the Browns are doing, or specifically Andrew Berry is doing, is he is restructuring the contracts of the players he knows that will be here for the duration of their contract. Let me give you just kind of the spark notes on how a restructure contract works. When you restructure a contract, it is not the player is taking less money, which the word restructure somewhat implies. But often these restructures, you don't need the player's approval or anything. All you're doing is you're moving money from their base salary into bonuses, which lowers their base salary for this year. They're still getting the same amount of money. It's just via a different way. But at the end of the day, their bank account still looks like a phone number. And you are lowering your cap hit for that player in 2023, that year. But as a consequence, you are raising their future cap hits. 2024, 2025, however long they're under contract through, you raise future cap hits to lower the current cap hit. It's kind of like levees in a canal. We got to raise the water and then lower the water, and then the boat can pass through. You know what I mean? Stick with me for a moment. So when you do all this, you free up cap space in the meantime, but you raise the cap hit in the future. So there are some pros and cons where if you want to have money right now and you want to go sign someone, you could restructure their contract, and then you could go have an extra $10 million in cap space to spend. But eventually you do have to pay the piper, meaning eventually those cap hits will hit. So if you keep restructuring and kicking the can down the road, well, eventually you're going to have a player's cap hit get up like, well, Deshaun Watson's over $60 million next year. So what is the Browns' strategy? Well, they know two things. One, the cap will always go up. Barring COVID, the cap will always go up, so the percentage cap hit for these players goes down, meaning maybe this year they count 10% towards the cap, but next year, even though you raise their cap hit, well, the salary cap went up even more. So all of a sudden, the percentage cap hit isn't 10%, it's actually a lower number. So that's one pro right there. Another pro is you can roll over cap space, meaning if you've got $35 million in the bank, you can actually apply that $35 million towards your salary cap next year, lower your cap hit, or lower the overall over the overall cap space, meaning if you're $35 million in the red, well, you rolled over 35, you're back to square one. So that's kind of the longish Spark Notes version that we all read walking to class in high school to read the chapter of the book that we did not read. But at the end of the day, what I want to know from everyone is there's a big move coming. Is Andrew Berry making all these moves to free up money to sign or trade for someone? Or is it just a bunch of like cap space mumbo jumbo and none of it makes sense? I have no idea. I think it's the latter, unfortunately. But Michael thinks so. Ryan saying he missed both ways. We're talking, without me looking, I'm going to guess Cade York. Rick Fletcher says yes. Yeah. I wasn't going to talk about Cade York today because I kind of wanted to just give that its own breathing ground and circle back to it when we had to put that fire out again on Saturday. We counted them. Okay, I will. This is my last comment on the Cade York. I am counting both the 47 and 41 yarder he missed against him in the Eagles game because he had two opportunities. I understand there was a penalty, but the penalty did not impact his kick whatsoever. So in my official stat book, I have him down for two misses, which brings him to a total of 3 for 6 in the preseason. Yikes. Some other topics we will talk about today, not just cap space. Deshaun Watson. I wish I talked about this a few days ago, but the preseason game got here, so I didn't really get a chance to give my thoughts on the whole Deshaun Watson subject. But I'm curious, what is your confidence level on a bounce-back season for Deshaun Watson? Scale it 1 to 10, 10 being you are adamant he is going to be a Pro Bowl player, meaning gun to your head, fire away, you know he's going to be a Pro Bowl guy. 1 being it's going to be worse than last year. For me, I'm at a solid 8.2. I am very confident. There's no such thing as a guarantee, so I can't say the 10 because I'm a bit of a coward, but I am just about there. So I'm at an 8.2 for Deshaun Watson, going back to that 2020 NFL passing leader form and some of his other great seasons down in Houston. Wow, Ryan's at an 11. I wish I was Ryan right now. I love your confidence, Ryan. Elaine's at a 10. Michael and Steven, 8.5. Brody's at a 7.5. Ty Man, the Buckeyes at an 8.5. We have 200-plus people watching right now, just 33 likes. If you don't mind, hit the thumbs up button. It actually goes a really long way to help the channel, so do me a solid and like the video. Mike Dibble's in the house. What's going on, Mike? He gave it an 8. Joshua Miller, 7.5. Epic Jets at an 8. Michael's at 7.5. Nicholas Donovan's at a 9. Joe's at an 11. Del G is at an 8. Tanner King's at a 9. Harley's at an 8.7. I'm at an 8.2. I'm at an 8.2 right now. All right. We have a lot of ground to cover on today's show, so I don't want to waste any more of your time this Tuesday afternoon. We will have a mailbag at the end of the show, as we always do. So get those questions in now. Pepper them in early and often. Hashtag Browns in the chat. You have to have the hashtag Browns somewhere in your message. Otherwise, as you know, the software can't pull it. Or if you want to skip the line, guarantee a spot on screen, Super Chat. We will throw your question on pretty much immediately, and we'll break it down, and everyone watching will get to see whatever you have to say or ask. Plus, Super Chats go an extra mile to help support the channel, but no pressure whatsoever. Now, here's what we got coming up on the show. The latest news and rumors surrounding all the salary cap speculation, if you will, in Berea. Some surprise cut candidates. I thought that this could be a good time to run through players that could be maybe on the way out that we're not quite prepared for going into their final preseason game this Saturday afternoon against Kansas City. And then that mailbag we just talked about, #Browns or Super Chat. Now, before we get into all that, Trace, could you maybe get some shout-outs? Because, boy, oh boy, do I have to blow my nose. And I don't want anyone watching right now to be subject to watching that or listening to that. So, Drizzy Trace is behind the camera today. He is going to give some shout-outs for a moment here while I, unfortunately, not do the dirty, but blow my nose because it is a nightmare upstairs in my nostril. So, Drizzy Trace, all yours.
Shout out Smitty for spilling alcohol on the soundboard. Yeah, you're muted too. You're muted too, so you're Gucci, brother. All right, so shout out to Ryan. He's saying, I heard Elijah Moore could be wide receiver 1 today. Gamer guys and gals, you gonna admit I was right about Geno Smith? G Fresh, give us Schwartz. Nicholas saying, what's up? Joe says, restructuring contracts equals new employees. Nicholas, shout me out. Shout out to Nicholas. Shout out to you, man. Thanks for joining us today. Petey, looks like he is looking ready to go.
Yep, I am back from blow my nose. So let's jump right into it, though, because we have 211 people watching right now. We have talked for 13 minutes. I really want to get into some hardcore Cleveland Browns football talk. 70 likes. Hit that thumbs up button. Let's shoot for 100 likes by the time we are done with the first segment on today's show. Trace, are we ready to jump right into it? All right, if you guys are ready to talk Cleveland Browns football, let me know in the comment section, like the video, and let's get to it. Are the Browns in for a big move? We are going to break down all of the money moves lately that have resulted in Myles Garrett and Joel Bitonio's contracts being restructured and whether or not there is some big splash, free agent, or trade on the horizon. Welcome into the Cleveland Browns report, though. Matthew Peterson here, feeling a bit under the weather, so if I sound a little off, I'm just battling a cold right now, so just bear with me for the next couple of days. But I do want to preface with this. Despite all their contracts being restructured and the Browns having the most cap space in the NFL to the tune of $35+ million, I am 94% sure that no big move is coming. But because of the man on screen, as I like to call him, Blockbuster Berry, I'm not even 99%, right? I originally put 95, and then I thought, nah, Berry's good for an extra percent. So I'm down to 94% sure that there isn't some big move coming that the Browns have to clear cap space for. I'll explain why I think they're doing these moves and these restructures, but we are talking about Andrew Berry. Who saw him trading for Zadarius Smith one Friday night in May? Not me. I got caught at date night, and I had to leave Shay at the restaurant for a minute. So let's jump into all of the news here because the Browns have restructured some cap space like Joel Bitonio to clear $7.8 million, and then most recently Myles Garrett to clear $12.8 million. And with that, the Browns have over $35 million in cap space, which is the most in the NFL. So why are they doing this, right? Why are they restructuring contracts? Well, my prediction is they want a bigger rollover from 2023. Now, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the nitty-grittiness of the cap space, but if you're unfamiliar, the cap is a mystery, and it's an enigma that no one ever really solves. But basically, at its core, the meat and potatoes of cap space is when you restructure a player's contract, you lower their cap hit for that season, in this case 2023, but raise their cap hits in the following years of their contract. So why do teams do this? Well, if they want immediate cap space, cap relief to go out and sign someone, they could restructure the contract of a player that they believe is going to be there for the rest of their current contract, which in Myles Garrett and Joel Bitonio's case is probably true. Not probably, definitely true. But like guys like Amari Cooper, maybe not so true. So you lower their cap hits for this year to free up cap space for this season, but you raise future cap hits. So why is Andrew Berry doing this? Well, there's a couple ideas. Mine is he wants to roll over more money into next year, $35 million, which will free up some of the negative deficit they are in. The Browns are currently in the red by $60-ish million, but you get to apply $35 million of that, so that takes a good chunk of that credit card debt away. By the way, they're not even the worst in the NFL for next year. CC the New Orleans Saints. Sorry, Trace. But maybe it's for this reason. Maybe it's because they want to extend some players. I did see, I think it was Tony over at ESPN Cleveland say that they might be looking to extend Nick Chubb, who is under contract through 2023 and 2024. Their other extension candidates include Donovan Peoples-Jones and Grant Delpit. I don't think that's what these moves are for. I don't see Andrew Berry extending either of those players before the season gets underway. Sure, maybe a mid-season extension like he did with Bitonio and Wyatt Teller. If DPJ is putting up really good numbers and he's like, you know what, I could wait until free agency and see if I get more money there, but Andrew Berry's offering me a bunch of guaranteed money today. I'll take the guaranteed G's. But for DPJ and Delpit, I don't think you're going to see a preseason extension, maybe a midseason extension, but maybe Nick Chubb, because he is, I wouldn't say the heart and soul of this team, but he's definitely a big artery in the heart and soul of this team. And so if Andrew Berry believes Nick Chubb has a few more good years left in him, maybe he extends him, kind of spread out that cap hit over the next few years. I think Andrew Berry would rather just ride out the next 2 seasons of Nick Chubb and see how he looks after 2024. But if it's not to roll over money and it's not to extend a player, Andrew Berry is planning a big move, right? And he is mobilizing and he is getting his ducks in a row and he is freeing up cap space and he's got $35 million to spend because most teams want to have about $5 million or so plus going into the season just to leave money in the bank for a rainy day. Well, what's this other $30 million for? I don't think it's for any of these free agents. When you look at the free agent market right now, none of these guys are commanding even half of $35 million, right? Kareem Hunt or Leonard Fournette would sign a 1-year, $4.5 million contract, right? You don't need $35 million to spend on those guys. I honestly struggle with just filling out 5 names here of players that the Browns could sign in free agency right now, because outside of running back, their roster is pretty set at this point. But if you are curious, who could the Browns be looking to sign with all this money? I don't even like these names in terms of fits for Cleveland right now, but they're the best names I could really come up with. So if it's not for a signing, what about a trade? I did see an interesting article from SB Nation, and they had 5 trade targets, so I thought I would present them to you guys and break them down one by one, starting with Aaron Donald. This has been a fun name throughout Browns Twitter. There's no real good reason why Aaron Donald has been not even linked to the Browns, but just been mentioned with the Browns, other than, deep internet rumors in the offseason when everyone's bored and we all just want to fantasize about Aaron Donald coming to our team. Because Aaron Donald is, the best defensive player in football, right there with Myles Garrett. Multiple NFL Defensive Player of the Year winner. Last year, he only played 11 games, but before that, 3 straight years of 12-plus sacks as an interior defensive lineman. That is just absolutely absurd. I don't need to be Aaron Donald's advocate here and try and sell him on you guys. We all know how game-changing Aaron Donald is, but there is one problem when it comes to trading for Aaron Donald. There's a lot of problems, but there's one big problem when it comes to trading for Aaron Donald. With what picks? I could buy into the Rams trading Aaron Donald if they want to do a hard reset. Aaron Donald goes, you know what? I've got my ring from LA. I kind of want to chase a ring somewhere else. Could you trade me? I could see that actually happening, but I just don't think it's going to happen with the Browns because the Rams are going to want a first-round pick back, and that is something Cleveland cannot offer. They don't have a first-round pick. They have a second next year. They have a third. They don't even have a fourth. I don't see the Rams taking anything less than a first and more for number 99. So for this reason, if Aaron Donald truly does become available, surely the Rams could find better offers from other teams that do have first-round picks. That is the biggest hurdle I have to get over with Aaron Donald potentially coming to Cleveland, and potentially is a very strong usage of the word there, I don't know what the Browns could offer to make a competitive deal to get Aaron Donald. But I can tell you this much. If Aaron Donald does come to the Browns, it would be unbelievable. Now, I do want to throw a hypothetical your way, kind of a would you rather. Just hear me out. Would you rather the Browns get Aaron Donald, but Deshaun Watson is mediocre? If you're playing deal or no deal, are you taking that deal? Knowing Aaron Donald joins the Cleveland Browns, the Rams do it for a second and a third. No one knows how Andrew Berry did it. Build a statue today. However, Deshaun Watson is mediocre this year. Deal or no deal? Personally, I would do no deal. Because we saw how with the Rams and mediocre quarterback play, they could only go so far. It wasn't until Matthew Stafford got there that they really got over the hump. I don't want to be the Rams team that loses to the Patriots in the Super Bowl and doesn't even score a touchdown. So I'd go no deal. You really go as far as your quarterback goes in this day and age. Moving on to their second trade target. We'll kind of rapid fire some of these bad boys. Linebacker, cornerback, DB, safety. I don't know what he is anymore. Isaiah Simmons. Former top 10 pick, right, by the Arizona Cardinals out of Clemson. And he has had a rough time just kind of figuring out his identity in the desert, right? They keep moving him around from linebacker to edge rusher to defensive line to corner. Like, in what world does a player play defensive line and cornerback in the same season? It's unbelievable to really think about the versatility of Isaiah Simmons. I think this is probably the best chance of all the long shots we're going to look at today because he happens to come at a somewhat position of need for Cleveland, which is linebacker. I think if you had the ability to pick a position from another team and add it to the Browns, I would probably pick linebacker because that's the one spot where it's a little bit of a question mark, right? Is Anthony Walker and Taki going to bounce back healthy? Can JOK play a full season? Simmons at least has been available so far in his career, but I still think this is a long shot. Moving on to some of the other trade targets, Devontae Adams was on this list. I don't see that happening. Jonathan Taylor, I get it because of like the newsiness of the recent trade permission he was given or permission to seek a trade. But no, not with Nick Chubb, of course. And then Jake Matthews, part of the Matthews family legend, but moving to left tackle and send Wills back for Matthews to Atlanta. Why would Atlanta do that? They love Jake Matthews. He has been their franchise icon since they drafted him. I don't see why the Falcons would do this. So, of all these 5 trade targets, and SB Nation didn't act like these were all locks or something, all these are big reaches. I think Simmons is the only one that I think could have a remote chance, but even then, I don't think it's more than a 5% chance. Now, before we get on to the rest of today's show, I do want to give some quick shout-outs to our recent subscribers here at the Browns Report. Rodney, Mike Jackson, Aaron Ford, Tyler Thomas, kind of flipped that O on the other side, but shout out to you for subscribing as of late. And hey, if you want to get on screen, subscribe because we give shout outs pretty frequently here at the Browns Report. Moving on to the second half of the show, I want to talk about Deshaun Watson for a moment and just a state of the union, if you will, for Watson and the offense. Because we've got some conflicting reports over the last week or so stemming from the joint practices to today about where this offense and specifically this passing game with number 4 is at. And this really took a life of its own after Zach Jackson wrote this article for The Athletic, and he said, stock up, stock down, stock down. The passing game has been completely unimpressive. Anything that involves Deshaun Watson remaining in the pocket has been an adventure. And not since early in camp have we seen strings of consecutive completions in any 11-on-11 period. There have been good moments. Here's the issue with training camp. We don't really get, and by we, I should be more specific. You, me, your average fan at home, the guy on Twitter trying to get some highlights and get just a recap of how everyone looked at training camp that day, we are so reliant on really 2 groups of people. The beat reporters that go to every single one, and your 3,000 fans that get tickets, and you get word of mouth through them. Let's start with the 3,000 fans or so that get tickets. Well, they're not really the best X's and O's digesters. So they often don't really know what they are looking for in training camp. These are half the time just walk-through practices. So you don't really have a good grasp of what to see that's good and what to see that's bad, right? Whereas in a game, you don't need to be a big film room expert to know that was a good play or that was a bad play. So that's Group A. It's hard to really know what they say, if it's real or accurate or not. Then there's Group B, which is your beat reporters. And that's where most of us go to get a good idea of how is everyone looking at camp? Who's looking good? Who's looking bad? Well, unfortunately, the beat reporters don't always see eye to eye because we get tweets like this back to back on my Twitter timeline of Chops tweeting out Watson to Cooper, 40-yard touchdown on 11-11 to end practice. And then at the same exact time, Zach Jackson tweets out something somewhat similar, but also kind of different. It was probably a sack, but practice ends with a 35-yard touchdown pass Watson to Cooper. They had a 30-yarder on what I think was fourth down in the previous drill. Pass rush was the most impressive group of the day, but it was the best day of 11-on-11 passing in weeks. So on one hand, you got Chop saying it was a touchdown. Okay, if you only see that tweet, you kind of leave Twitter and you talk to your friends and you're like, dude, Watson and Cooper connection is heating up. They're looking awesome. But then the tweet right below from Zach Jackson says, well, yeah, that's cool and all, but in under game circumstances, Watson would have been sacked. So that touchdown pass never happens. So that connection doesn't really exist. So it's a little difficult to really have a good idea as to what's going on in training camp because we are so reliant on the beat reporters that if some of the beat reporters are, and I don't really blame them for this, a little afraid to speak up against what the rest of the group is saying and be a dark cloud and say, well, actually, I don't think it has been that good. Well, then everyone's just going to roast that beat reporter, which in this example is Zach Jackson, going, we don't want your negativity out here. You Baker, bro, get out of here. We've heard Watson is great. Well, yeah, you're hearing it from all the other reporters, and I don't think those reporters are wrong or the reports are inaccurate, but it's all about the eye test in training camp, and more or less people tend to fall in the same line of thinking because they look around and see, what is every other reporter saying? Good things. Well, I don't want to be the black sheep. I don't want to be the one dark cloud in the sky and say, I don't think it's all as good as advertised. Now, we've got some more things from this article I want to break down, and I've already taken up probably too much of your time today. But Zach Jackson also wrote, David Njoku has been open since July 22nd, and Watson usually finds him. There have been a few wow throws by Watson, and it's perfectly reasonable to think that with Amari Cooper, a limited participant for much of camp, and Elijah Moore getting days off to heal his ribs, there's time for a turnaround. I'm going to say, yeah, it's probably pretty important to have your wide receiver one. That's why training camp is tough to really evaluate in terms of buying in or not buying into these storylines. When the regular season rolls around and Amari Cooper's out there for pretty much every single passing down, that's going to change how the offense looks. Same for a healthy Elijah Moore. So when Deshaun Watson is playing with Mike Harley Jr. and Dalen Baldwin and Jalen Baldwin or all these guys, Jalen Darden, whatever, all these second and third stringers, it's not going to look as pretty. But the good news is they won't be the guys on the field in the regular season. And we have more from this to look at in just a moment. But first, there is an awesome sweatshirt on sale right now. Now, I know it's August. It's still hotter than hell out there, but it's 50% off. And I think it's a really cool brown sweatshirt. So I just wanted to toss it your guys' way because if you want to get, someone a Christmas present, but you don't want to spend all that money in December, well, you can get it right now, 50% off. Put it in your closet. December rolls around, and you are thanking yourself for getting an awesome gift, 50% off in August, or you can just buy it for yourself because I'm a huge fan of this sweatshirt. Chatsports.com/CLE hoodie. That link's in the comments and the description of today's video. Let's wrap up with this last quote from The Athletic where Jackson said, there just hasn't been much consistency and there hasn't been much of anything more than 10 yards downfield. Watson threw bad interceptions after getting caught locking in on one receiver each day of the joint practices. And by now, we already know this story. I know I'm a little bit behind, but we have tweets like this from Dov, and Dov was one of many who tweeted out, Deshaun Watson has thrown 3 interceptions to Eagle safety Reed Blankenship during joint practices. And that got twisted into basically Watson threw 3 straight picks to the same safety in the same day. No, what the reality was he threw 3 interceptions to one safety over 2 days, and the even further reality was he didn't even actually throw 3 picks to him. He were picked off twice, and one of those, the safety was out of bounds. So quickly, we've gone from 3 picks to 1 guy in 3 straight plays to 1, maybe 2 interceptions to 1 guy over 2 joint practices against the top NFC defense last year. I don't think that's the worst crime against humanity. So time will tell, but I'm still in on Deshaun Watson having a bounce back, breakout, whatever you want to dub it as, 2023 season. Because I know in training camp, they don't often show a lot of things. Also, teams like to be a bit more of a risk taker in training camp, meaning instead of just throwing it out of bounds, you might as well try and fit it into that wide receiver, because if it is picked off, it doesn't actually matter. It's not a game. So you got a different mindset knowing, what do I have to lose? Sure, the DB makes a nice pick on me, but on the off chance he doesn't, I can start getting some really good reps in with my wide receivers and pushing the envelope a little bit. Whereas if I throw it out of bounds, what service does that do anyone? So what's your confidence level on a bounce back year for Deshaun Watson? Scale it 1 to 10. I'm at an 8.2, 10 being he's going to be an all-pro player, all-Pro Bowl player, whatever. 1 being he's going to be awful. I'm at an 8.2. Now, one quick news item I want to hit on before we really let you guys go here. Todd Bowles announced that Baker Mayfield is the Bucs starting quarterback. You're lying to yourself if you don't keep somewhat of a loose tab on all of your X's. So, yeah, this is the latest on Baker. No, there is no connection anymore to the Browns, so you can't even try and pretend like you were following Baker last year because you wanted to know if you get a 4th or a 5th round back pick from Carolina because of the stipulations in that trade agreement. But Baker is the starter. I wish him well. I wish him all the best down in Tampa Bay. I hope he can do well. I feel like the number one reason why people get so divided over Baker is if Baker does well in Tampa, the rest of the national media is going to shove that down Cleveland's throat, saying, this is why you should have moved on from Baker, because Deshaun Watson sucks and you could have had Baker. So naturally now we kind of want to root against Baker a little bit to justify the move in our head, when I think you could have the best of both worlds. Watson can do well and Baker can do well. All right, this has been an absolute episode of or movie of an episode or whatever. Trace, rapid fire, pick your card, buddy.
Going 8 of spades.
8 of spades, I like it. I'm going to go with 3 of clubs. 10 of diamonds. 10 of hearts, I beg your pardon. 10 of hearts. Okay, so David Njoku had his contract restructured while we're filming right now. All right, well, David Njoku just has his contract restructured just as I filmed all of that at the beginning. So that makes things very wonderful for this cut right here. We'll probably have to splice in something at the beginning, so you're going to go through a time-traveling vortex where it's beginning, middle, end, and back to beginning. So we'll break down the David Njoku restructure in just a moment. Okay, so holy smokes. We got David Njoku getting his contract restructured. What is going on in Cleveland? Wow. The David Njoku one catches me by surprise. What? Yes. What is Andrew Berry up to? Okay, we'll just get we'll just do cold open. Yeah, that's yeah. Okay. Yep. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So we'll break this down. It definitely changes. Excuse me. It doesn't really change all that much other than just the facts and the numbers. David Njoku, though, had his contract restructured. It clears a little under $3 million in cap space. So this one catches me by surprise because I know that Myles Garrett and Bitonio will be here for the rest of the duration of their contract. I believe Njoku would be there too, but let's be honest. Like, if you had to rank the confidence level and who's here for their entire contract and does not get cut a season early, Garrett, Bitonio, and Njoku, is anyone putting Njoku not last? I'm going Garrett, Bitonio. They're basically tied, but if I had to put one above the other, I'd go with Garrett first because he is younger, and then Njoku. So let's toss this in, and then we'll add that to the front of the video, Trace, if we can do that. All right, so for all of you watching at home right now during the live show, you get to see how the sausage is made. We're going to have to gerrymander a little bit and move some pieces around here, but there is something going on in Cleveland. Let's break this down, shall we? So just as we finish filming today's episode, and you're actually going to see me find out in real time at the end of the show, the Browns restructured not only Myles Garrett and Joel Bitonio's contract, but also David Njoku to clear $2.7 million in cap space and bring their total cap space up to $37 million. Now, at the start of the video you're about to watch today, in real time, I did not know that move had taken place because it hadn't taken place yet. But now I really wonder, what is Andrew Berry doing? $37 million in cap space is a lot of money. Does he just want to roll it all over? Or is he truly clearing cap space for some ginormous blockbuster move, and this was the last little couple of cents and dollars he needed to get the money free to make some sort of move? Now I'm definitely ears perked up. And in the video I said there was a 94% chance there's no big move coming. I'm probably now at a 92% chance. But enjoy the rest of the video. I'm sorry for the time traveling, but that's the nature of the beast, baby. David Njoku also had his contract restructured. Is a big move coming? Oh boy. Is a big move coming? Makes you wonder, why does Andrew Berry need $37 million in his pocket going into the season? Usually you want that kind of money. No, because the title kind of already says the same thing. We did have some super chats flying, though, from Chef Ruben. Chef, we got a new profile picture. Chances Ronnie Hickman makes the 53, go Browns. I would say over 50%, but he's not a roster lock. If he continues to show us what we have seen through the first 3 games of the preseason against the Chiefs, that'll make him close to uncuttable. Does he make the Browns 53? I can't say definitively 100%, but I think he makes someone's 53, where if the Browns waive him and try and sneak him on their practice squad, after 3 interceptions in 3 preseason games, there is a team out there that would claim him on waivers. But Chef Ruben, thanks for the super chat. Another $2 super chat, though. F Clowney, F the Ratbirds, let's go Browns. What a turnaround. Going from spamming 90 to re-sign Jadeveon Clowney to F Clowney. The good news is the Browns play the Ravens in Week 4, and there's a 99% chance Jadeveon Clowney will be injured by that game. That's just the way the Ravens are going to go, so Raven fans will find that out soon enough. The way Clowney left the Browns, it was so distasteful. It was so immature, I thought. Kind of putting some blame on Garrett or acting like Garrett was, this sweet prince that no one could else, like taking all the good pass rushing reps away or whatever exactly Clowney said. It was just like, shut up. Garrett has 16 sacks in 2 straight seasons. Garrett can do whatever he wants to do. Like, yes, to a level, but also it's Myles freaking Garrett. Like, Clowney kind of fall in line a little bit. So we got that. Coming up next on the show, we're going to look at some surprise cut candidates and a mailbag. If you're just tuning in, we have over 300 people watching right now. Like the video. Also, I am battling a cold right now, but I wasn't going to take a sick day. So I'm sorry for sounding just a little blah. But just bear with me here. We're going to break down some surprise cut candidates, and we'll talk more about the contract restructures. Get those questions in, though, for the mailbag. Hashtag Browns, or like Chef Ruben did, you can super chat. If you super chat, we guarantee your super chat goes on screen, of course, for all 300 plus people watching to see. Like the video, just 116 likes right now. Can we get to 130 likes? Can we get 15 more likes on the video here before we start our surprise cut candidates as I take a quick swig of water? Okay. Ryan Chowder saying Cooper Cup so we can have the Cup duo. That would be kind of cool. I mean, just name-wise, that's pretty badass.
2 receivers, 1 cup?
That's all the fantasy football names in Cleveland right there. I don't hate this take by Ryan going like, what if Andrew Berry's just looking at it going, I'm already all in. Why even hold back in the slightest? Meaning, if I could get a better player and the only drawback is I have to spend more money, well, why not restructure contracts? So something's going on in Berea. I don't quite know, but that's going to be the name of the movie. If the Browns win the Super Bowl, something's going on in Berea. I don't know how well that movie title would really sell, actually. Not Draft Day. Okay. Stuart Anderson, could the Browns be freeing up cap space for Chris Jones? That's a good question. That's definitely a good one. Hashtag Browns, and we can answer that question later on in our mailbag. So, with that being said, we've got some surprise cut candidates next up on tap. We ready to rock and roll, Mr. Gerard? All right, Trace, let's get into it. Coming up next on today's Browns Report, we are going to look at some surprise cut candidates because we have one preseason game left, and I think it's a good time to look over some players that I think need to show up a little bit more just to solidify their spot on the roster. But if they do get cut, I would definitely be a little bit surprised by it compared to the 90th guy on the roster. So let's get started with, just the biggest talk of town right now in terms of wide receiver rumors for the Browns. What about David Bell? Just last year, he was a third-round pick out of Purdue, the 99th selection, a top 100 pick. And fast forward to 1 year later, and there are already a lot of people on Twitter saying, cut David Bell, cut David Bell. Yes, he has not had a great start to his NFL career in terms of just productivity in the preseason. 6 grabs, 46 yards, 1 touchdown, definitely being outshined by Austin Watkins. But last year in the regular season, just 24 grabs for 214 yards. So the productivity is not necessarily there, but I still think David Bell makes this roster. He's still running with the first-team offense in practice. So that definitely tells you where Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry sort of view David Bell. And ultimately, that's the most important mindset, right? Not what would you do if you were the GM, but I'm not interested in that because I'm not the GM. So what does it matter what I would do? I want to predict what I think Berry and Stefanski will do. And I think the guy that keeps running with the first-team offense in practice and in the preseason is going to make this roster. But predict it for me, will David Bell make the roster? I know as I filmed this live on Tuesday during our show, David Bell was out there with the first-team offense at training camp, and Austin Watkins was not. So do with that information what you will. Moving on to our second cut candidate, what about running back Demetric Felton? I still think this would be a bit of a surprise. He's like, a tier and a half above like Hassan Hall, UDFA running back. But Demetric Felton so far in the preseason, 22 carries, 113 yards, 1 touchdown. Like surface level, the numbers look pretty good right there. But in the regular season, through a couple of years now in Cleveland, he hasn't really taken off. And he's a 6th-round pick. I think the expectations for a guy sometimes are a bit too high because you didn't have a first-rounder, so you're more reliant on these day 2 and day 3 guys all of a sudden. But Demetric Felton is kind of towards the bottom of that running back depth chart. He's battling with John Kelly for that RB3 spot, and let's be honest, neither guy has been overly impressive so far. I think Felton is a coin flip. He's 50-50. If another running back like Dearness Johnson in Jacksonville gets waived, or a notable-ish name ends up getting cut because that team, whether it's, like a random team like, say, the Bears or it doesn't really matter, the Titans, whatever. If they cut someone that is above Demetric Felton in the Browns' eyes, well, they could move on from Felton and go claim that guy on waivers. So that's why I have Demetric Felton as a 50-50 player at the moment. Moving on to our third surprise cut candidate, what about center Nick Harris? I don't know what to make of Nick Harris anymore because after Ethan Posick's breakout year last season, Nick Harris went from unfortunately being someone who tore his ACL and we'd get him back next year, and he was J.C. Tretter's replacement too. Is Nick Harris about to be off this roster? Just a few years ago, he was a 5th-round pick out of Washington, and fast forward to 2023, he's coming off a torn ACL, and he's battling for that backup center job with the rookie, Luke Whippler, who has looked really good so far in training camp and preseason. Now, when you look at the depth chart, there's not a lot of great interior backups at the guard position. Like maybe Drew Forbes or Michael Dunn. Those 2 guys are sort of a Swiss Army knife. They've been tackle, they've been guard before. But ultimately, if I'm compiling the best 9 offensive linemen for the Browns, I think these are your 9 guys that make it in my roster projection video, which has your 5 starters. DeJuan Jones is making this roster. Excuse me. I think James Hudson makes the roster as well. Luke Whippler and Nick Harris, I think, are just better football players than Drew Forbes or, the next guy on that interior offensive line that could maybe make a move for a job or for a spot. So I think ultimately Nick Harris does make this roster, but he might be a guard/center in 2023 if something were to happen to Wyatt Teller, because we know Bitonio is an Iron Man, knock on wood. Now, before we get on to the rest of our cut candidates, we are closing in on 21,500 subscribers, which is pretty crazy to think about just because, don't let me go too far down memory lane here, but you guys can comment when you subscribe what the number was at, because I took over this channel and we were under 1,000 subs here at Chat Sports, and here we are 20,000 plus subs later, which is really crazy to think about. But let me know what, number you're at when you subscribe. And if you haven't subscribed, consider joining our growing Cleveland Browns community here, because we are 61 subs away from that next milestone. Fourth surprise cut candidate, I'm going to go with Jordan Elliott. This one would definitely surprise me, not because of his outstanding play, but because the Browns reworked Elliott's contract and added guaranteed money. Now, it lowered his cap hit as a result, which is why the Browns did it, but they were so confident that he would prove to be someone to make their roster, they guaranteed $1.5 million. Now, $1.5 million is not a lot of money in NFL world, but it's also not no money. It's $1.5 million. Like, if you're the GM, it's kind of a tough sell to go to your owner and say, hey, I know that just a few months ago he had no guaranteed money, and then I added guaranteed money, but now I'm cutting him, so we guaranteed $1.5 million. That's not the greatest managerial work right there. When at one point you had no guaranteed money, so you could have cut him and be scot-free, and then you decided to add guaranteed money just to cut him a few months later. You know what I'm saying? Now, he's battling for that last defensive tackle spot with Maurice Hurst because Shelby Harris, Dalvin Tomlinson, and Siaki Ika are locks to make this roster. So if the Browns roll with 4 DTs like they did last season, that leaves Jordan Elliott and Maurice Hurst. Last year, Elliott was somewhat unplayable. Like, if it wasn't for Perion Winfrey and Tommy Togiai being his backup, he probably would have been benched. He would have been benched on most other teams. But like I said, the Browns' defensive line, it's somewhat filling out really quickly here, where you've got Tomlinson and Shelby Harris to locks to make the roster. Siaka Ika's a rookie, is going to make it. So if you're rolling with 4 DTs, I like Maurice Hurst more than Jordan Elliott, but the $1.5 million that Andrew Berry guaranteed him probably locks him in, I'd have to think, right? But maybe Andrew Berry goes, you know what, I made a mistake. I'm not going to punish the rest of the team and the fan base because I had a bad decision back in May, June, whenever they made this restructure and guaranteed all this money. I'm going to eat it. It's a mistake. I'll own it, and that's that. Now, before we get to our 5th and final surprise cut candidate, really quickly, today's show was made possible thanks to our sportsbook partner, BetUS. So consider supporting BetUS by going to chatsports.com/bet, promo code Browns125. You put that link and the promo code in, you get a 125% deposit bonus. Now, if you're wondering what you can bet that on, how about some AFC North odds, where I've showed this before, but I'm going to continue to harp on it until everyone watching cashes in on, I wouldn't say free money, but pretty good value in my opinion, at plus 375. The Steelers suck. The Bengals will not go 3 in a row. So we're down to a 50-50 shot between the Browns and the Ravens. And at plus 375, that's pretty good value for a coin flip in my opinion. 5th and final surprise cut candidate, how about DeAnthony Bell? I don't know if this would be a ginormous surprise, but for someone that made the 53-man roster last year and to not make it this year, I think that constitutes as somewhat of a surprise. Now, so far in the preseason, DeAnthony Bell hasn't been a liability on the field, but he also hasn't been as good as this guy, Ronnie Hickman, who so far in the preseason has 3 interceptions. He has been the star of the defense in the second half so far. So if the Browns want to roll with 4 safeties, well, they've got 3 safeties locked into the roster. Juan Thornhill, Grant Delpit, and Rodney McLeod. So when you look at the depth chart here, that leaves Ronnie Hickman and DeAnthony Bell battling for that last safety spot. Now, maybe the Browns have both guys making it. But if Cleveland wants to go with 4 safeties, well, that's going to have an odd man out here. I ultimately think both DeAnthony Bell and Ronnie Hickman have shown they are deserving of a 53-man roster spot. So the Browns take both safeties, and another room has a position taken away from it. Like the offensive line, instead of having 10 guys, has 9 guys. You see what I'm saying? So I think Bell and Hickman both make the roster, but Ronnie Hickman has definitely outplayed DeAnthony Bell so far. But the Browns liked what they saw in DeAnthony Bell last year. At the end of the year, he was getting more snaps than Ronnie Harrison on the field. So I think both guys ultimately make the roster, but Bell is definitely someone who could be a surprise cut candidate if Hickman continues to play well. So drop your surprise cut candidate for me down in the comment section. Maybe I didn't even include number 10 because it's not a surprise anymore. Like if I did that, that'd be the laziest surprise cut candidate ever. Tired of seeing all these articles of like, one player all 32 teams could cut. I already know who it's going to be for the Browns. Like, get some new material, please. Let's pick a card, though, to wrap up today's show. Trace, I almost dropped all the cards. What card do you want to go with?
I'm going 4 of hearts today.
4 of hearts? Okay. I like it, amigo. I like it. Producers are up 3-1 over me, and I've got like 2.5 weeks until September 10th to try and make a furious comeback. One more cut. I'm going to go with the 6 of diamonds. What'd you go with?
4 of hearts.
8 of spades.
Oh,
8 of
that was
spades.
my last one.
Oh, that's a bad beat right there. That's a bad beat. All right, that's going to do it for us on today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like the video, subscribe, all those cliche stuff, and we'll catch up next time. Mailbag coming up next on the show. What's that? Okay. I don't see anyone who got it right. Ace of spades. I feel like it's just so much more fun to guess a face card and have that hit. When I got King of Diamonds, like I would not have wanted to hit on any other card. Just King of Diamonds is badass. I get the 6 of clubs right. It's like, dude, what a pussy card. Okay. Joshua Miller, based on salary cap projections, we carry over the cap space and let go of Cooper. We'll be at approximately 0 over the cap. Those 1-year contracts expire, and then we have some space to sign free agents. So that's a good point that Joshua Miller raises. We are going to get into a mailbag. So I think we saw a couple super chats fly in towards the end of that last segment. We'll get those on screen right now, and then get those questions in. Hashtag Browns, or you can super chat. Just under 300 people watching right now. So if you've got a question at all, feel free to ask it down in the comment section. Brian Horier, what's going on, Brian? Will Austin Watkins Jr. make the team? A few days ago, last week, I had 4 Bernie heads. I definitely was a prisoner of the moment. The fact that he's still not running with the first-team offense in practice is a bit concerning if you want to say he's a lock to make the roster. I think Austin Watkins Jr. makes the roster. If he continues to play as well as he has so far against the Chiefs, how do you cut a guy who has 300-plus yards and 3 touchdowns in the preseason with Kellen Mond throwing to him at stretches? Like, that, in my eyes, is deserving of a roster spot. Plus, the Browns somewhat have a path at wide receiver in the future, but also not really, right? They've got Elijah Moore and Amari Cooper under contract next year, but Amari Cooper's got a $23 million cap hit. Browns are going to have to make some cuts. If Cooper is someone you move on from and you don't re-sign DPJ, all of a sudden your returning wide receivers are Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman and maybe David Bell. Don't you think you want to have Austin Watkins in training camp next year? And if you waive him and some other team signs him, well, they have his rights then, and they can sign him to a future contract. And then you kind of you lose out on Austin Watkins, who could have a much bigger role next year if you're moving on from some of your current wide receivers. So I hope he makes this team. I think he is deserving of it. He has looked great so far. He was signing autographs for veterans today after training camp, and someone's like, I hope you make the roster, dude. And he goes, I pray I do. So I'm pulling for number 80 for sure. We've got a $10 super chat coming in from Max Nikolenko. The NFL weak and dying. Rumor is if a player goes down during a game with an injury requiring a stretcher or hospitalization, games will be ended right there. So what Max is referencing is not just Damar Hamlin last year, but also in the preseason this year between the Patriots and the Packers, where Isaiah Bolden, I hope I don't get the name wrong, the Patriots cornerback went down. The Patriots were winning. It was like 21-17, 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and they called it. And I don't think that's going to be the case in the regular season. Like, it's preseason football. Coaches ultimately can just kind of get together and go, we don't want anyone to get hurt. That's the end of this. And so if coaches see what they want to see and they don't want to see another injury, sure, in the preseason they'll call it. But in the regular season, if an injury like that happens and the coaches get together in the fourth quarter, if one team's down by 4, that coach is not going to agree to just let the score stand and pack it up and go home. Sure, it's different in the Damar Hamlin case because that was such a severe and just a first, I think we could all say, right? Whereas head injuries happen more often. This was not a head injury. This was a heart issue. So I don't think you're going to see this trend continue moving forward, Max. Ryan Chowdhury, next one up on the show. What's going on, dude? With the money, thoughts on trading DPJ for a better wide receiver? Some guys getting older but can still contribute a ton. With $37 million in cap space, Ryan, I can't say no to that idea, right? I can't stand here and say that's just so far-fetched. DPJ so far in camp hasn't been, like, tremendously impressive. But again, we just have to work off of highlights we see on Twitter. So it's really hard to gauge where actually people in front view DPJ, right? We might not have high accolades for DPJ, but we go off of Twitter highlights. The guys in charge, they don't go off Twitter highlights. So my thoughts on this, it very depend on who that wide receiver is. But if you're telling me trade DPJ and a second for Cooper Kupp, well, duh. Like, who wouldn't do that deal? But I don't know if you could get Cooper Kupp for that price. So I'd have to know who the wide receiver is. But as a whole surface level, if it's a star wide receiver, yeah, I mean, I love DPJ. I've always said if I see someone in a DPJ jersey, I'm buying that guy a beer. But I can't pass on a star wide receiver for a contract year from a guy who has 800 career yards as a career high in a season. Yeah, I'd be lying to you if I was standing here going, no. Cooper Kupp, put him to the side. Give me Donovan Peoples-Jones over him every single day of the week. Caleb Logan, what's going on, dude? What do you think about Tariq Cohen for RB2? I saw this floated out on Twitter today. The human joystick as he goes by, he missed all of 2021 with an ACL injury. He suffered, okay, let's kind of start at the beginning of the story. He got a contract extension with the Chicago Bears in 2020. The next game, he tears his ACL. Sucks. Just brutal timing for both parties. The next year, 2021, Tariq Cohen is like MIA through all of training camp and preseason. He ultimately just misses the whole year with that ACL injury that just never really healed all that well. Then when he's training for 2022, he pops his Achilles in like April. So he misses all of 2021, all of 2022, and a good chunk of 2020. So 2.5 years of football out the window. Tariq Cohen has been training. He says he's ready for a return to the NFL. He's 28 years old. He's one of the most electric players to look highlights for. If he's truly in football shape, yeah, I loved what Tariq Cohen did with the Bears. He was a really fun player to have on that team. So if he really is ready to roll, then sure, I think he's better than Demetric Felton. Without a doubt, he's better than Demetric Felton. So if you can get Tariq Cohen in a Demetric Felton role, but actually do what the Browns wanted Demetric Felton to do, sign me up. Little Fred, what's going on? I left, but did you say we're getting Fred Warner or not? I like where your heart's at, Little Fred. Unfortunately, the other Fred Warner, he ain't coming to Cleveland. The 49ers are not moving on from Fred Warner. He is a staple of that defense. So that would be cool. If you're looking for linebackers, though, that could get moved, what about what's his face from the Bucks? The 5th round, Devin White, thank you. Devin White would be a spot where he's a good player on a bad team. So I could see them selling. The 49ers were in the NFC Championship game last year. They're not moving out from Fred Warner. So Devin White would be someone who could be a more realistic target. We got some more super chat or some more questions coming in. If you want to guarantee your question on screen, you can super chat, and Trace will throw that on next. Tim Green, what's going on, dude? Matt, will you have a new poster for members to sign this year with a dog bone I'm getting pumped. Go Browns. Tim, I guess we have missed you during the first 3 preseason games. We got a new poster. It's the same one as last year, but I do kind of like the dog bone idea. So maybe that's something we do in the future. I'll try to implement that. But Tim, we do have a poster, $50 super chat. We'll throw your name on it just like last year. Thank you for always continuing to support the Browns Report. You are the man. Mike Dibble, I'm surprised it took this long to get a Cade York question. Do you think Cade York can be a great kicker in the NFL? I do. What do you need to be a great kicker in the NFL? Accuracy and distance. He has the distance down. He has had accuracy down. He just can't seem to get it down when the Browns are playing in an actual game. So, do I think he can be great? Yes, because I have seen him kick from 60-plus yards and make it. I have seen him be accurate in LSU and reportedly in practice as well. But for whatever reason, those two things refuse to come together when it matters most in the regular season, or in this case, the preseason. So I could see the Browns having buyer's remorse, or not buyer's remorse, but cutter's remorse, where if they move on from Cade York and some other team goes, hey, I don't know what was going on in your head, but you're going to get a fresh start here in LA or in Carolina, wherever. Because we love that leg. That sounds a little weird. We love your distance. And the accuracy we can have it come along with. We have coaches for that. So I think he does have the potential to be a great kicker in the NFL, Mike. But right now, the accuracy and the mental yips keep getting in the way. Cool guy called Zone, next one up on the show. I see a lot of people putting the Browns at 7-10 and the Jets over 10 to 11 wins. They are just as overrated as we were last year. No hate, only because coaching put us at that. Why is that? Well, for the Jets, let's start with the Jets side of things. They had a great defense last year. Their offense sucked. Their offense held them back. So when you go out and get a recent back-to-back MVP quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, it's fair to try and connect the dots of great defense that kept them in a lot of games. If only they had better quarterback play, they would have won more games. Here's why I'm not super high on the Jets. One, it's very difficult for defenses to be consistently good back-to-back years. Usually offenses stay consistent, but defenses come and go, right? If you get an interception, it turns the whole mood of the game around. If a fumble bounces your way instead of going out of bounds, it's a whole different ball game, right? Those types of bounces are very tough to have go your way year after year. Whereas with offenses, you got the same quarterback and the same wide receiver and the same running back, they can produce year after year after year, and you don't need those bounces to go your way as much. So that's why I'm not super high on the Jets. But if the Jets do get those bounces, and Aaron Rodgers does get back to being an MVP quarterback, and even last year, for a bad year for Rodgers, it was better than most quarterbacks' good years, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to go, the Jets should be good. Now, as for the Browns being 7-10, I think those are coming from people who are probably in some sort of camp of they don't want to see the Browns succeed because they don't like Deshaun Watson, which, if you don't like Deshaun Watson, who am I to say you're wrong for that, right? We understand that as a fan base, it can be a bit tough dancing or beating around the bush and talking about Watson and wishing him success and also trying to compartmentalize all the allegations and whatnot. It's a lot of gymnastics we do. Let's be real. And if people want to see the Browns fail because of it, man, I remember wishing the Pittsburgh Steelers fail when Ben Roethlisberger had all those allegations. So I can see where they're coming from, but if we're looking at it from a talent perspective and just going down the roster, no, the Browns are not a 7-win team. They have Pro Bowl talent. They have all pro talent on both sides of the football. You know how difficult it is to get all pro talent in general, but to get it on both sides of the football? Yeah. Jimmy G, what's going on, dude? What is your vote for Andrew Berry, for what Andrew Berry does with the cap space money? Is it better to get a player or to make room for keeping some guys on one-year deals past this season? I ultimately think Andrew Berry is going to roll over all this money. Now, the David Njoku restructure catches me by surprise because why do you need to restructure Njoku for $3 million in cap space? You're not really saving a whole lot there. So that one makes me wonder if there's more to this. But up until that moment, I thought it was just to get a bigger rollover, to reduce your cap deficit for 2024. And then, like you say, Jimmy, you have some more freedom to spend in free agency as a result. But $37 million in cap space right now, it does give you options, no doubt about it. I think he's going to roll it over. Joshua Miller, next one up. What about a sign and trade for Chris Jones? This would be unbelievable. Then again, how many Chiefs fans saw Tyreek Hill getting traded? That was unbelievable. And I don't mean unbelievable in the sense of it's unbelievable, but it actually did happen. I mean, like, it's actually hard to believe that happening. Chris Jones was the best defensive tackle in football last year. He was better than Aaron Donald. He also played more than Aaron Donald, but without a doubt, Chris Jones was DT1. Are the Chiefs really about to move on from DT1, who's in the prime of his career? Maybe if they think they can not fleece a team, but get a great return like they did for Tyreek Hill, and they've got guys who can step up and not skip a beat, sure. But they also pulled off that Tyreek Hill trade before the draft. So they got all the Dolphins picks for that draft. If you trade Chris Jones now, you are without Chris Jones for 2023, and you don't even have draft picks for the 2023 season. So you got to go another year until you can get those picks and actually use them, and you didn't have the services of Chris Jones. So unless the Chiefs and Chris Jones are miles apart on an agreement, I got to envision that Kansas City will get this done. Mike Dibble, who is your sleeper to have a breakout season? Mine is J.O.K. J.O.K., if he stays healthy, I sure hope so, because with that defensive line, he should be able to use his athleticism, that kind of combination of a safety linebacker almost, and fly from sideline to sideline and get into the backfield. I like the JOK selection. Mine is Elijah Moore. I don't think it's even a sleeper anymore, but like, you just go look at Elijah Moore's stats. We talk about him as if he is a back-to-back 1,000-yard receiver. I think he can get to 1,000 yards, though. So Elijah Moore would be my lazy answer. My deep cut. What about... Okay, this isn't even a lazier answer, but Denzel Ward is having an awesome training camp, guys. Like, Denzel Ward is looking like the man that they paid top dollar for this year. So hopefully Denzel Ward can stay healthy. Knock on wood, he's been healthy all of camp and preseason so far. I think we might get the best season from Denzel Ward yet. Little Fred, what's going on? Mailbag from Kansas City. I'll be at the game Saturday. Little Fred, that's awesome, dude. If you're going to the game, let me know down in the comment section. But shout out to you, Little Fred. Enjoy the game, dude. Michael Simpkins. I think Watson needs to play majority of the first half. What do you think? I think Deshaun Watson needs to play the Chiefs game until you have seen enough. So what does that mean? It means that the first series is a 8-minute, 75-yard touchdown drive. I think you've seen enough from Deshaun Watson, meaning you wanted to see some good stuff. You saw some good stuff. Don't push the envelope. Don't risk an injury. If Deshaun Watson goes 3 and out on 2 straight series, then you probably need to see more Deshaun Watson, right? So you probably need to trot him out there from a 3rd series. And if that means it goes into the end of the first half, okay. So I think Deshaun Watson does not go past the first half. That is the absolute latest. But Kevin Stefanski said 20 to 25 snaps. Well, if they go 3 and out and 3 and out, he's coming out for a 3rd series. But if that first series is a 14-play, 8-minute, 80-yard touchdown drive, then you can probably go, hey, Deshaun, we know we wanted to see 20 snaps. We saw 14. They were 14 great snaps. No sense in risking an injury for 6 more snaps. You know, grab a hat and stick it on the bench for the next 3 quarters of football here. Joshua Miller, next one up on the show. If we make a deep playoff run, should Andrew Berry be Executive of the Year? I would say so. Will he get voted that? Probably not, because he traded for Deshaun Watson, and a lot of the country and a lot of the league did not like the move of trading for Deshaun Watson, but also rewarding Deshaun Watson with, and I don't get this, it was not the first ever fully guaranteed contract. Someone can fact check me. Kirk Cousins got a fully guaranteed contract with the Minnesota Vikings. Did he not? He got like a 2-year, 3-year, $90 million fully guaranteed. But people did not like Deshaun Watson being rewarded with a $230 million guaranteed contract. They also didn't like how Andrew Berry made his base salary $1 million and change so that if he was fined, well, he would not incur as many penalties. But Andrew Berry did that for Denzel Ward. He does that for everyone. So I don't think that was just specialty, treatment for Deshaun Watson. But all those things factoring against Andrew Berry, you're just going to find some really uptight sports writers that refuse to vote for Andrew Berry as a result. Last question coming in from Tim Green. And if we get a super chat, we can continue staying live here on the channel. If not, Trace Gerard, he's going on a bachelor party, I want to say, going to Scottsdale soon. Thursday. So Trace has some other work to get done before he goes on that bachelor party. So I don't want to keep him here late tonight. So unless we get some more super chats, we will have to resign. But Tim Green, can Myles break Reggie White's sack record with Jim Schwartz and the additional talent added? Go Browns. By Reggie White's sack record, can you look up the individual season? I thought that belonged to Michael Strahan, who got that BS sack, by the way, against the Packers. Like 26 and a half sacks for Michael Strahan. Come on.
Michael Strahan of the New York Giants and T.J. Watt of the Pittsburgh Steelers hold the record with 22 and a half sacks, which Strahan set during the 2001 season and Watt matched during the 2021 season.
Yeah.
In 2013, the NFL created the Deacon Jones Award to recognize the annual sack leader.
What's Reggie White's single season sack record? Like 20 probably?
Let me look. Reggie White.
But
record.
How about this? Tim, if you don't mind, I'll rephrase your question. Can Myles Garrett get over 20 sacks? He's only gotten to 16 in the season before. I would say that is doable. That's absolutely doable because Myles Garrett, as a player, is capable of getting to that number.
21.
21 sacks?
21.
Okay.
198 over his career, 21.
So can Myles Garrett get over 21 sacks or break this all-time sack record? That's not an easy thing to accomplish, but I do believe that with Zadarius Smith opposite of him and Okoronkwo rotating in with Smith, which means those guys are going to be fresh, which means they're going to be coming very hard in the fourth quarter, which means running backs and tight ends have to also factor in those players, and they can't just solely focus on 95. He could add 4 to 5 more sacks to his career high, and that would get him over 20 sacks. That is going to do it for us on today's show. Unless we get another super chat in the nick of the time here, we are going to sign off. But for all of you that have tuned in so far today, thank you so much for hanging out with us. This has been awesome. If you are tuning in for the first time, by the way, every single Tuesday now, new time, I think it's a come up in the world, but new time every Tuesday, 5 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Central. No, that's the old one. So ignore that. That says Thursday. That was before. Now it's Tuesday. So every single Tuesday, 4 o'clock Central, 5 o'clock Eastern. I got to fix that. My bad. We will be live here on the channel, talking shop, talking brownies. So set your reminders, all that good stuff. Trace, thank you for all your help today. Let's pick one card to kind of wrap up the show. Unofficial. But everyone watching right now, get your card into the chat.
I'm liking the 9 of Hearts.
9 of Hearts? 9 of Hearts? Okay. I am going to go, I almost don't want to get this right because it's unofficial, but I still kind of want to get it right. That's fair. I'm going to go with the 7 of diamonds. 7 of diamonds. Okay, here we go. One last call to get your cards into the chat. I'm going to go 7 of diamonds. What did you say? Trace? It is a 9 of diamonds.
Oh, no.
9 of diamonds. Oh, that's such a bad beat right there. Okay, that's going to do it for us on today's show. We will sign off. We will see everyone later. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and go Browns.